Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished delegates, it is my great privilege and honor to convey to you, in honor of His Excellency Ibrahim Traore, President of Burkina Faso, Head of State, the fraternal and friendly greetings of the valiant people of Burkina Faso, who, despite all the adversities, including the ignominy of the aggressor and enemies of peace, manipulations and interference of all kinds, has continued to build resilience to its radiant march towards inclusive economic and social development. I am also pleased to translate to you, on behalf of the government and the people of Burkina Faso, my warm congratulations for your election to the presidency of this 79th Ordinary Session. My delegation and I would like to congratulate your predecessor, Mr. Denis Francis, on the achievement made during its term of office in an international context, particularly marked by profound divergence. Mr. Secretary, Burkina Faso appreciates the systemic action that the United Nations and its partners, under your coordination, continues to carry out on the ground in support of the government efforts, and it is in this regard that my country welcomes the choice of the theme, which is so evocative and challenging for this 79th General Assembly, leaving no one behind, to act together to advance the most important peace, sustainable development, and human dignity for present and future generations. By evoking this theme, allow me to convey to you at the outset the aspiration of the Sahelian social strata in general and of Burkina Faso in particular. I am a peasant who watches over and perpetuates traditions and customs. I cultivate with ordeal my land, which was given to me by my ancestors to feed my family and ensure my well-being. I want to be able to live free, dignified, and proud. I am a woman, a mother, wealthy descendant of the princesses Yenega Jimbi Ouattara, in the image of the brave Sahelian women with the characteristics of a strong force. I have given my life to ensure the future of my children, my brothers and sisters, my compatriots in a society of peace and love. I want to be able to live free, dignified, and proud. I am a young Burkinabe farmer, breeder, trader, civil servant, artist, craftsman and craftwomen, student, young people from all regions and all walks of life, from a brave and combative youth committed to bringing milestone to the development of Burkina Faso, to be able to live free, dignified, and proud. I am a child. Girls or boys from towns and villages, internally displaced. I want to be able to live free, dignified, and proud. I am a Burkinabe, Nigerian, Malian soldier for the defense of the homeland. Spouse, father, mother, son, daughters, brothers, and sisters. I have taken an oath to defend my homeland at the cost of my life, to fight the enemy on the battlefield with selflessness and to protect my fellow citizens from all danger. I want to be able to live free, dignified, and proud. I am a Burkinabe living outside, hardworking, courageous, relentless, and honest, from the land of men of integrity. I stay far from the motherland. I participate with enthusiasm in the common struggle for peace and stability of my country and my sub-region. I want to be able to live free, dignified, and proud. Mr. President, this aspiration had the mark that organized the action of the government, whose fight is to create a framework so that men and women of Sahel can live free, dignified, and proud. The theme of our session, much appreciated for its relevance, a fundamental concern as old as the United Nations, and which is addressed by the quasi-totality of the debates that have taken place here, which means that it is no longer really a question of thinking about what to do or what to do. It is a question of giving substance and life to our speeches through concrete actions. We must go beyond words to finally act in favor of a fairer world, free of prejudice and stereotype that tend to relegate certain people or part of the planet to the background, condemned to wait in jails of isolation and contempt for potential help at the mercy and at the whim of the modes of power that claim to be the only ones who can indicate the course and the rhythm to others. We must refocus our efforts more on the fundamental objectives of our organization, primarily dedicated to the promotion of the well-being of populations and people by ensuring peace and security. This urgency and absolute necessity to build and act in favor of a more just world is all the more relevant in the current context where our world is dominated by persistent crises, complex conflicts, and inequality in economic governance. That accentuates the divide between states, the division between people, with the correlation of human tragedies. This disastrous configuration is the result of a multilateralism at the crossroads, whose reputation has once again been tarnished by the partisan and predatory actions of a certain member state, which have set themselves up as masters of the world, and who have made the subjugation and exploitation of other states the guiding principles of their foreign policy. We must rightly be concerned about this, because the harmony and cohesion of our world are at stake, which is why Burkina Faso take this opportunity to appeal once again to reason and wisdom on the part of all, especially the powers of our planet, so that to prioritize inclusive global governance, to get rid of hegemonic visions, it is at this price that we will restore all its letters of nobility. Mr. President, to restore the integrity of the territory by ensuring the security of the populations and their property, their well-being, rebuilding political, administrative, economic, and financial governance, so that it carries and embodies the aspiration for the betterment of the Burkinabe people, carrying out reforms and development actions that will lead to shared prosperity and sustainable economic and social progress, are all the projects begun under the leadership and foresight of His Excellency Captain Ibrahim Traore, President of Burkina Faso, Head of State. The Burkinabe people, who have decided to affirm and to assume its sovereignty by putting an end to its enslavement, and who has shown extraordinary resilience, like all the populations of the Sahel, has understood the stakes and the scope of this struggle, and has mobilized alongside our defense and security forces with this unwavering support. Thanks to the patriotism, ingenuity, bravery, and spirit of sacrifice of its sons and daughters, Burkina Faso has achieved hope for success and appreciable results in the relentless fight against terrorism, instigated remotely, controlled, and financed by new colonialist powers. This is the place to pay a strong tribute to all those civilians, soldiers who fought on the battlefield and whose memory I salute with respect. Mr. President, at the cost of strategic and visionary reforms, marked among other things by the increase in the reorganization of our fighting forces on the ground, we have multiplied our means of action, with the saving effect of a total takeover of the reconquest of the areas infested by these criminals and their allies. In a concrete way, nearly 70% of the territory is now under the control of the states, compared to 40% in 2022. This has allowed the resettlement of displaced populations and the reopening of schools. Also, in less than 2 years, the actions of reconquest have permitted nearly 7,000 people to regain their villages and more than 1,500 schools to reopen their classrooms, offering the chance and happiness experienced by millions of students to return to school and pursue their educational goals. These results, which command admiration, raise a lot of hope. Where possible, thanks to the action of the defense and security forces, the patriotic commitment of the volunteers for the defense of the homeland, and the firm support of the populations, as well as the Burkinabe diasporas, in a tremendous surge of solidarity. This patriotic mobilization of all the components of our people made it possible to collect the sum of more than 165 million US dollars for the year 2023 alone, a figure that has far exceeded the initial forecast, which shows how determined the Burkinabe people have financed to engage alongside the defense and security forces in the noble fight against terrorism and their allies. Mr. President, at the very moment when we are reaping success in our victorious offensive against the terrorist forces, agencies with dubious reputation and integrity have curiously engaged in a vast and virulent campaign of denigration and stigmatization against our fighting forces that they accuse of violating human rights without having the slightest proof to produce. This propaganda is orchestrated to demoralize the patriotic Burkinabe and sabotage their legitimate fight. These followers of chaos have not yet understood the dynamic that is in motion at the Sahel. That is to say, our desire to free ourselves from all tutelage and from all paternalism. My country would like to take the opportunity of this rostrum to express its infinite gratitude to all its friendly countries and sincere partners who support its cause and accompany it in consolidating its radiant march towards inclusive economic and social development. I would therefore like to invite the member states to grant no credit to all these agitations, which obviously reflects in substantial distress of the wounded terrorists and their sponsors. I would also like to reassure them of all the professionalism and reputation of our defense and security forces demonstrated through their participation in peacekeeping operations and the fact that they are recognized here. The systematic formation and permanent evaluation, the defense and security forces, the VDP, and international human rights guarantees daily professional rigor and in respect of human rights. Mr. President, insofar as there is unanimity on the need to combat international terrorism, my country is concerned about the support given by state entities to terrorism. This sponsorship that we have constantly denounced and which others considers to be a mere side of the spirit, have recently been brought to the face of the world by a paradoxical attitude of Ukraine, a member state of our organization. In effect, by unequivocally affirming its involvement in the terrorist attack that caused the death of elements of the Malian Defense and Security Forces in Tizawatem, Mali last July, and by admitting its support for international terrorism, particularly in the Sahel. This country has given an overview of the subversive activities it is carrying out in the Sahel to the attention of other states active behind the scene of treason. We reiterate our firm condemnation of this act of aggression and glorification of terrorism which violate the Charter of the United Nations and the International Convention relating thereof. These particular serious facts are indicative of the truths that have constantly marked the history of our continent, namely balkanization, assassination of leaders, interference in the internal politics of states, and predation as the final goal. The means to achieve this range from manipulation of national elites, regional and sub-regional organizations, to the penetration of proxies wars, as is the case in the Sahel, where Ukraine and other countries finance and arm terrorists with impunity. This reading, which moreover finds its relevance in the worrying proliferation of military bases in our sub-region, also explains the possessions by criminal gangs of sophisticated weapons and the latest weapons. In the face of this new type of terrorism, the stability and foundations of our state and our organizations are compromised. It is therefore urgent to take vigorous actions for their part, and with regards to the case of Ukrainian aggression, the countries of the Confederation of Sahel States have already referred the matter to the Security Council on August 20th, and we are waiting for a firm response to this regard. Mr. President, in the face of the imperative Sahel security authorities, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger decided in full sovereignty on September 16, 2023, through the Liptako Goma Charter, to create the Alliance of Sahel States. It is a military alliance. It is a military alliance of collective defense and mutual assistance to fight terrorism and organized crimes on our territory, to also provide appropriate response to the complex challenges of development of the AES. We have decided to extend the scope of the cooperation to other priority areas of our space, and it is in this spirit that was held on July 6, 2024 in Niamey, Niger, the first summit of the head of states of the AES. At the end of this historic summit, His Excellency Captain Ibrahim Traore, President of Burkina Faso, Head of State, Colonel Assimi Goïta, President of the Transition, Head of State of Mali, and Brigadier General Abdourahmane Tiani, President of the National Council for the Safeguarding of the Homeland, Head of State of Niger, adopted the treaty establishing the Confederation of Sahel States. The popular support and enthusiasm generated by the advent of the AES Confederation can be explained in part by the failure and inability of sub-regional institutions and mechanisms to respond to the security and legitimate concerns of our populations. This life-saving and salutary action is aimed primarily at protecting the populations of the Sahel, already suffering from the humanitarian security crisis, and against whom deliberate murderous measures have been taken to further exacerbate their suffering. Mr. President, while this session calls on us to leave no one behind, international scene is still unfortunately marked by more and more tensions that seriously threatens peace and security under the watchful eyes of the United Nations. Burkina Faso calls for diplomacy to be used in order to resolve these disputes peacefully. We remain convinced that by ensuring that the spirit of the Charter of the United Nations prevails, we will succeed in extinguishing tensions of all magnitudes, and wherever they occurred in Africa, Europe, the Middle East, Asia, or in America. In the spirit of the Charter of the United Nations, Burkina Faso reiterates its support for the political process on the way in Western Sahara, conducted under the auspices of the Secretary General of the United Nations with a view to reaching a mutually acceptable and negotiated political solution, as recommended by the relevant resolutions of the United Nations. Burkina Faso reaffirme sa solidarité aux populations palestiniennes who are experiencing an unprecedented tragedy. The two-state solution, Israel and Palestine, living in peace and good neighborliness, remains the alternative objectives that Burkina Faso continues to support. Our acceptance of the Palestinians as member states of the United Nations is part of this logic. Mr. President, undeniable source of suffering for the most vulnerable populations, unilaterally coercive measures imposed on states must be proscribed if we want to give real and objective content to the objective that is the subject of this session. That is why we call for the immediate lifting of economic, commercial, and financial sanctions imposed on certain states whose only fault is the search for freedom for their people. This is the case of Cuba. It is also the case of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Nicaragua, Iran, and many other countries. On development issues, Burkina Faso would like to recall that whatever their relevance, the commitment to development made here at the United Nations will have no chance of success without the good faith and involvement of all with regards to the reform of our organization. It is time for Africa to be able to participate fully in the United Nations Security Council in accordance with the African position that reflects the process we have carried. This will make it possible to consecrate the universal character of the UN and to highlight the persistent injustice against Africa. Mr. President, to conclude, I would like to point out that Burkina Faso has faith in the UN, but it hopes that the organization's interventions will be carried out with respect for the sovereignty of the member states, their strategic choices, and their fundamental interests. In the Sahel, wind of renewal and hope is now blowing, brought about by the advent of the AES Confederation. Burkina Faso remains convinced that this new sub-regional integration community, which is not directed against any country or people, can contribute in collaboration with sincere partners in an approach devoid of any hypocrisy to the fight against terrorism and insecurity in the Sahel. God bless Burkina Faso. God bless the Confederation of Sahel States. God bless Africa. The homeland or death we will conquer. Africa, wake up. Africa, rise up. Africa without borders. Africa, continental free trade area. The time is now. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.